Your elderly loved ones are fine until they're not. And when they're not, they stay in a bad state for a while. And it's still, although you anticipate it on some level, it still comes as quite a shock, and you don't expect the role to reverse.
Hi, I'm Michelle Bosch, real estate investor, mom, wife, and host of the InFLOW podcast. And I'm passionate about helping women invest in land and apartments. Join me each and every week for real estate investing strategies and interviews with thought leaders that will leave you inspired and ready to step into flow for inflows of cash, inflows of ease, and inflows of grace in your life. Now, here on YouTube are the video versions of my podcast, and in order for you to get my latest information, please go ahead and subscribe. And now, let's go. Welcome to the InFLOW podcast. I am your host, Michelle Bosch. I'm very excited this morning to record this interview with this amazing lady. Her name is Theresa Maskrey. Theresa is the Chief Operating Officer for Shepherd Premier Senior Living. She has over 30 years of experience in the healthcare marketplace. She was a senior VP of, a big corporate, company in the medical field. She works side by side with long-term care owner operators, and now she oversees operations at Shepherd's existing homes and is primarily responsible for opening up new homes once renovation is completed. So I'm really excited to have you here and talk about, assisted living. So welcome to the InFLOW podcast, Theresa.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we are very happy to have you. As I was telling you, towards the beginning of the show before we started our recording, I attended a couple of months ago a real estate meetup here in town, and there's a couple ladies that were interested in, finding homes for their elderly parents, and they just couldn't find adequate things that, were up to their standards here in the market. And they're like, I feel a calling, I feel the bug that this is what I'm supposed to do, that there is an opportunity also from the real estate, standpoint, and that I could basically be doing good, doing well while doing good. So how did you get started with assisted living? Can you tell us a little bit your story and, a little bit about you?
I am one of those gals that burned out of corporate America. I worked very hard to get the office and the title and the responsibility and the job. And, I'm mother of 5 and grandmother of 8. I'm married to a wonderful man. And the job was just consuming everything. And I'm very driven. And so I'm, way more focused on getting things done than I need to. So to make a long story short, I just burned completely out. Took a year off and was really at a point of like redirection in my life. Where do I go from here? I'm 61 today. I was probably 57, 58 at the time, not done. I could have, but I knew there was more. I knew there was something better. And so a friend introduced me to a young man named Brandon Schwab. Mm-hmm. I have children his age. I got clothes older than the guy, right? So he is a real estate acquisition developer, flipper, but he had traveled to Central Florida to visit his father-in-law. His father-in-law is a retired chiropractor, and he was playing the piano and telling corny jokes in an old folks home. But in this example, the home was actually a house, not a nursing home or a big building. So it just dropped in Brandon's heart. He looked around this house. He saw these seniors living peacefully and comfortably at home. He was with his wife. He had his boat hooked to his truck, and he drove the 24 hours back to Chicago and started Shepherd Premier Senior Living. About a year later, I met him, and I didn't know what to do with him. We had lunch every Tuesday for months, just talking and dreaming, and I caught his heart. I caught what he wanted to do, and I was so focused on his dream, and I just went after it with him. And then I started handling his marketing. So I was, I'm a woman of a certain age. And so if I tell you I know about caring for your mom, you're going to believe me a lot faster than you're going to believe a 38-year-old handsome fellow, right? So I started doing the marketing, and I left a marketing event, and I was driving back home and it hit me. This is what I want to do. This isn't just his dream. This is my dream too. And so I went home and I spoke to my husband, and within 24 hours, we were investor, owner, operators with Brandon. That was in 2016, and we've never looked back. We're thrilled and delighted to be doing this. So it's a quirky story.
Yeah.
I didn't envision any of this, but we're certainly loving it.
Wonderful. And so I know that at some point you also were looking, for care, long-term care, and assisted living for your.
I cared for my mother-in-law for 12 years and then got through that horrible experience. And then right after that, my father, who in his 70s was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and we ultimately lost him at 72. So I ran a sales career in the healthcare space, or a sales force in the healthcare space, and I thought I knew my way around it. I thought I knew where the good help was. But what I learned from trying to serve my own family is there isn't any good help. Most of it, I used to go around saying, I've seen the good and the bad and the ugly in healthcare. Well, it was mostly bad and ugly, which, I was aware of in my career, but when it touched my family, it was a different deal.
Yeah.
It changed, and it changed completely when I needed to use the healthcare system.
Yeah. So, and especially like if you're, younger, like even like 5-10 years ago, I didn't think about that, for my mother, but now my mother is 75. She's still strong. She still travels back and forth, does everything on her own, drives and so on and so forth. But now, I'm 43 and I'm starting to think, well, if I look out a decade, 10 years from now, how is that going to look? Sophia is still going to be, I have a 12-year-old. So I'm like, she's going to be in college. So I'm going to have, still the caring for, her to a certain extent, and, and caring, I'm going to be the sandwich generation, caring for an elderly and caring, still taking care of, still a young adult. And yeah, those are things that now I'm like, okay, this is actually getting closer, closer than than I think.
It doesn't give you any warning. It just shows up one day. Your elderly loved ones are fine until they're not, and when they're not, they stay in a bad state for a while. And it's still, although you anticipate it on some level, it still comes as quite a shock, and you don't expect the role to reverse. You don't expect to be responsible for your parents. But, lo and behold, we found ourselves there with just what you just described. 2 teenage children at home, 2 careers. And our belief system at the time was keep her with her family. What's best for a senior is to be with their family. And that is not true. It was totally the wrong thing to do in our example, because although I'm a pretty good daughter-in-law, I'm not a trained caregiver. And I didn't recognize the signs of decline and age and dementia in our example. And so I underserved these people that I loved very much. And so my experience really was horrible. So the idea that we found a better way, it doesn't have to be bad. It's not like the rest of their life is going to be one bad day after the next bad day. It doesn't have to be that way at all. And so to be able to offer a solution, it feels really good.
Beautiful. Now tell me, what is your current focus right now? Like how many homes do you have now open? And what is in general the current focus and the outlook?
We are in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Okay. So we're probably an hour from Chicago by train. And the way this works is that it has to be a residential setting.
Yeah.
The dwelling has to be a ranch, a spacious ranch. Okay. And it has to be, and I'm saying has to be, must be, nestled into a neighborhood. And here's why. Seniors age and they decline. They lose their health. They lose their independence. But the other thing they lose is their neighborhood and their community and their home. And so most of us don't live in a big building. And the predominant option, it's at least here in North Chicago, is a large building. which is a very different way of living than most people live. And so the idea that we can give them a home and a life quality with all the clinical standard of care that they need, it's just a better alternative. And we're serving the senior, our care staff, and that family.
Yeah.
Because they get to go to sleep at night feeling, they want to fix everything and they can't, but they go to sleep at night feeling pretty good that they got best possible for mom.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you a little bit about the real estate opportunity also behind assisted living. That comes from being able to provide this great care,
Sure.
care that, some of us think, the home probably is the best, but not in all situations. So, for the elderly, from a demographic standpoint, a supply and demand standpoint across the U.S., what is the opportunity from a real estate standpoint as well?
There is such a big, giant real estate opportunity in this residential assisted living model that you couldn't over describe it. And I say that because the senior, in the influx of seniors, the graying of America, if you will, it's creating a housing crisis for seniors. That the healthcare system, the economy, no one's going to be prepared for this when it happens. It's the largest population group ever to flood into the healthcare system, and it's going to make a huge demand. And so anything you can do to get ready for it. So I understand, put up a big building, put 120 beds in it. I want those people to succeed. I want those buildings to work. But frequently they don't, because the national stat for caregiver ratio, which is a big determination of care, is 1 to 20. It's 1 to 30 or 50 at night. These residents typically are incontinent. They need to be checked and changed every 2 hours. Just do the math. No one's getting any care. Our care ratio is 1 to 5.
Got it.
So we license with the state. We buy a piece of real estate. We renovate it. We're licensed with the state. We get the physical site ready, sprinklers, security on the doors, nothing too crazy. We open the home, fill the beds, and we start providing the care. I wish I could tell you that it's a whole lot more complicated than that. It's really not. It's a basic, pretty simple business model that is very, very lucrative. Yeah. Which to me is the byproduct.
Yeah, absolutely. There is. I always say that there's a spiritual character to money. It's not the money, the dollar transaction per se, that gives, that it's charged. It's the reason why you're doing and the impact that you're having on people.
Yeah.
And I'm all about, making money in incredibly meaningful ways, in something that touches your heart. So I know you mentioned earlier something about, because I have here, where do you invest and how do you go about selecting a home? So right now you guys are only in the Midwest, and it's a home that needs to have, like you said, ranch style. When you say, land around it, nestled within a neighborhood, like what size property are we looking at? 1 acre, 2 acres? Like,
I would say a minimum of 1. Our smallest property is on 2.3 acres. And the reason I say that is these homes don't have a sign and they don't have a parking lot. They're luxurious, beautiful homes. And when our residents look outside, they see a vast lawn or a wooded forest, or they see potentially another neighbor. They don't see anything institutional inside or outside. So they're not getting a message every day that I'm sick and I'm old and I'm near death. It's a whole different atmosphere.
It's a whole different atmosphere. Now, as far as square footage, like how big a home are we looking at?
Well, I mentioned earlier that the care ratio that we manage to is 1 to 5. So that would say, at least here in the state of Illinois, that a house that could accommodate 10 seniors is optimal.
Okay.
Because you can easily staff in that 1 to 5 care ratio. The smallest property we have, and it feels a bit crowded, with 10 seniors in it, is 4,600 square feet.
Got it.
we are renovating other properties that are 10,000 square feet and 18,000 square feet, which might be too big in the end. We won't know until we get the renovation done and see if we can't turn it into a cozy home. But these people are on equipment. They're in wheelchairs and they're on walkers, so you need wide halls and you need square footage.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what is the typical capital investment needed in order to open a new home?
You know, I really need Brandon to answer this question well, but I would say the house is going to be about $500,000 in this market to get enough space in a neighborhood where you want to be. We do aim for a demographic that is in an affluent neighborhood because assisted living is entirely private pay. Most people have this belief that the government or some insurance provision is going to be there, and it's not. It's all out of pocket. It's all private pay. So you got to target those families that are able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a big factor. So the house in $500,000, $750,000 price point, it'll be a few $100,000s of investment to get the physical site of the house ready. And that is a wide hallway that I described. You're going to have hard surface, waterproof floors that are as warm and inviting as you can. We do carpet in the bedroom, for example. We have to prevent elopement risk. So there are keypads on the doors, so they're secured. There's a sprinkler system. We have to address the septic. So you've got a few $100,000 there getting the house ready for the site. And then you've got the whole licensing process.
Yeah, I'm assuming that all these regulatory steps and licensing, is that like a big hurdle to open a new facility? Like in terms of time, like when you decide, okay, it's time for us we found a great site, from acquisition to renovation to permitting and licensing, what time frame are you looking at?
Well, it feels like an eternity, but I think in truth, it's just a handful of months to get it all done. But that's going to really vary a lot by the state you're in. So these homes, these residential care homes, are really popular and very common in warm weather states. We're in a cold weather state that has a very high percentage of seniors. So we have actually tapped an untapped market with a very lucrative business, senior living business model. And I would encourage everybody to consider those cold weather states because this option just isn't available.
What kind of returns is someone, like, if they're looking, from a business model standpoint, what kind of returns can somebody expect, from either if they had the capital to go out there and, purchase the real estate, renovate it, and then partner with someone that would be a great operator that has all the qualifications to provide that, top-notch standard of service and care. What are we looking at? Like,
I would say that you're talking about, if you do a large property, certainly in this market, you're in a $700,000, $800,000 investment price point. And we have an investment model that we offer that offers a 10% preferred return. But the other part of this that I think is so important is that the business model itself. So if you have a ranch home and you have 7 bedrooms in it, and you can share a bedroom, so you have 10 residents in a 7-bedroom house, the lease for the care and the space in the home is an average of $5,500 to $6,500 per month per bedroom. So after you take the third resident, the balance of the revenue stream off that property is profit.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Very, very lucrative. So the gross margins are easily in the 35, 38% range.
Perfect.
So there's a nice yield from an investor, and there's a nice yield from an operator. The operator will have all the headaches though.
Yes. Now, do you build facilities from the ground up? Have you guys done any building from the ground up, or do you always look for existing stuff?
We're about to. Well, first of all, I have to correct you, Michelle. You're beautiful and I love you, but we hate the F word. Facility is not part of us. So whenever anybody says the facility word about us, we always correct them.
You're like,
because we're
my
residential.
red flags go up. Yeah.
No, it's kind of a standing joke with us.
No,
We're having a
absolutely.
hard
Thank you for
time.
the education. I appreciate it.
It's such a big distinction for this. There are
Yeah.
plenty of facilities out there. There aren't very many of these homes at
Yeah.
all. But in the market we're in, we're not finding spacious ranch properties that we think are suitable. When we do find them, the renovation is a huge burden, both in terms of headache and cost. So next year, there's a Del Webb property, which is a 55 plus senior living property that is home for 5,700 seniors in a nearby town. And we bought 15 acres of land that shares a fence with that neighborhood. And we're going to build 6 homes that are 8,000 square foot each. And next year, we'll have some experience with what it's like to build one. Is it easier? Do you get there faster? We'll find out.
Many of us have aging parents, and like I said, we're in this aging, this sandwich generation. So you said that is it a per room rate or is it a per person? Like what is somebody looking at? I mean, is this like $5,000 to $8,000 a month? Like what are we looking at to be at the level of care that you're offering, where it feels like a home, where it doesn't feel like a facility, that
Sure.
that it's like I'm in a community, it feels like a family, and so on and so forth.
So the first thing I would say is that the warm weather states are gonna have a lower rate for the bedroom and the care. In a cold weather state where it doesn't exist, you're basically charging, what we did was go to the middle of the rates that all the big buildings around us are offering. We took that rate and we flattened it out. The reason we flattened it out is because there's a game out there where you offer a low rate, you get mom, it's always mom and it's always a daughter handling this part of life. Sorry to any guys I'm offending, but it's how it goes. But there's in a warm weather state a much lower rate than there is here, and there's this game of you offer a low rate, and then as mom declines, you jack the rate up based on whatever level additional care is required. And I have a fundamental ethical, moral issue with that, because the families that come to us, they know one thing: they know how much money they have. They don't know how long mom's going to live. They don't know how ill she's going to become in her journey. So we offer a flat, all-inclusive rate that does not go up when they decline. And they lease a bed in a shared bedroom with another resident or a private bedroom. And the lease, it really looks like an apartment lease.
Are we talking like year leases, or is it a much longer term?
We it looks like a year lease, but it's really month to month. We have a 30-day out, and so do our families. But it includes everything: meals, transportation, salon services, housekeeping, laundry.
Ooh, salon services. I like that.
Exactly. So we pretty much take over that senior. And so daughters and sons get to be daughters and sons, and we get to carry the water for the care.
Yeah. Got it. Now, how do you incorporate, inflows of ease and grace and faith in those homes and in your daily life? How does this all come?
Well, this one's easy for me. So most seniors, if you look around senior living, they feel like God has forgotten about them. And they're just going to sit around and wait till their body gives out. They're just sitting around waiting to die. I have a fundamental belief in Jesus Christ and Father God, that is not how he is at all. That he has a wonderful plan for these seniors. He hasn't forgotten them for a minute. And so if you confront that at this part of their life, and you invite them to find another way to think about a good, loving, benevolent creator God who hasn't forgotten about you, you take this huge burden away. And so, and then you start really celebrating the good days that come and not overly focusing on the bad days to come. So we really introduced that. We're not faith-based. I feel very strongly that anybody of any faith could live in our homes quite well. But we do feel like we do encourage that because that's where we believe peace and comfort originate from. And so if you really want to be good at that stuff, you got to start there.
Yeah, absolutely. You personally, how do you bring grace into your life on a daily basis? Like, so you're operating, I mean, you do have the stresses, of, the operations of not just the one home, but many homes. And you have a life outside of that, and we're all so busy. And how do you make time, or are there any rituals that you practice on your daily life to keep you, going, feeling powerful, feeling, ready for the day? What are some things?
Well, my faith is where it all begins. But one thing I would say as a woman later in years versus the way I was when I was 43 is this. I am very picky about what I will allow as a stressor in my life. Anything that stresses my life better be tied to what I believe my purpose is and what I'm supposed to be doing. And if those things are going to stress me out, I'm easily reminded, this is what I am meant to do. And the stress just falls. But if you're not connected with your purpose, with the higher calling of what you're doing, if it's just about getting money, and I know what I'm talking about because I did it that way too. I just chased the almighty dollar for years. But to devote whatever skills or gifts God gave me back into building up the kingdom of God in a way that is meaningful, that serves other people, as long as the stressor is tied to that, I'll take it. I don't expect not to have any, but I expect to approve what is allowed to stress me out.
That is a very important distinction. Of many women that I have interviewed, you're the very first one to say, well, first of all, I have like this clear boundary of what I even allow, to occupy my headspace. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
it's kind of an authority thing. You can't give stress a place of authority in your life. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's where your faith's got to be.
Yeah. Now, what do you attribute your success as a woman, as a person, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, as an operator? We tend to like separate those things out, but we're all one. We it's like, it's one big full life. What do you attribute your success to?
Well, it's funny that you say that, and I don't mean this to be negative, but I don't think of myself as successful. I think of myself more as free to continue growing and developing and becoming the woman that God created me to be in the beginning. And honestly, it's flattering to be thought of. I'm at 61 as a successful woman, but I could have gotten here about 20 years ago if I'd been a little smarter, right? So I don't think of it that way. I think of it more about being free to be myself, to be the woman that God created me to be on a journey that God set me on with a good end. And that's a little bit different than climbing the corporate ladder or being an entrepreneur or, or being a player in the senior living space. It's a whole mindset thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have, different definitions of what, success, and we get to now be I feel like a generation of women that get to redefine what success means to each and every one of us. You know what I mean? So totally.
We don't deserve success to be labeled in a common way. We're all individual creations.
Unique. Absolutely. What are 3 pieces of advice that you would have for women out there in general? Now looking back, you said, I could have gotten here 20 years earlier, or to be at this point of incredible satisfaction and fulfillment in what you're doing, on a daily basis, like just any piece of advice that you would have for yourself, for your 40-year-old self.
Sure. I had a job where I had a $250 million quota that I had to hit through a bunch of really crazy talented salespeople, and I hit it. And I was so proud of that. But in the end, all I did was try to prove a point that didn't need to be made. So if your life is about proving a point, then you got to make sure the point you're trying to prove is tied to a faith, a value, a long-term achievement that is in your heart, not just in your wallet, not just in your pay plan, but it's, you know, it's got to live in your heart. And you've got to believe that you're not alone, that, you know, there is a benevolent, loving creator, God, who had a plan for creating us. He parked us here in the countries we were born in, at the ages we are today. And none of it was happenstance. All of it is calculated and ordered. And if we could just believe that he's good and that he's on our side, and that, and here's the painful thing though. I have learned though that we're really results focused, right? We're all about, you know, getting to that end goal result. He's more about the process we go through to get there, because that's how we learn. And so if I knew that in my 40s, I'd probably be way further down the road than I am today.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that perspective. Now, it occurred to me as you were speaking, and, you know, of being very heart-based. And earlier in the conversation, you said, I somehow got in touch with Brandon, and it was the right match. When we look for partners and partnerships, what made you think, yes, this is it? Like, what are some things to look out in partnerships to know whether this is what is going to be a good fit or not?
You know, with Brandon and I, we had this crazy connection immediately. I'm his mother's age. So, you know, and I kept thinking, well, you know, I am, you know, around these parts, I'm known as Mama T. So
I saw that in your bio. Yeah.
So at first I'm thinking I'm just having this motherly affection for him. But it was so much more than that. And for me, I didn't understand the connection until I tried to walk away. I was very arrogant at the time and very non-entrepreneurial and very focused on, you know, I have a resume. I mean, I have a resume that travels. So why would I do this small local entrepreneurial thing when I've worked so hard to know what I know? And so once I let go of the pride, I just had this peace. I felt compelled to be in the relationship. And along with that compulsion to be there, I just had this crazy peace. So I stayed. And now look what happened.
So, yeah. So it's much more than a logical mental exercise that you went through of risk and benefit analysis. It was much more of a sense of how you felt. It's, you know, that's one of women's superpowers is intuition and this ability of empathy and connection and, you know, webbed thinking. This is what I feel like you tune into to decide, okay, this is a good partnership, you know. Maybe sometimes things look great, fantastic on paper and numbers pencil in greatly, but hey, you know, don't forget to check in with how does this feel, you know, and how. Yeah,
that's really it. That's the one thing I would add to what I just said is, you know, when you've got an aggressive goal and you've got a big payoff, if you hit your goal, you do whatever you have to do.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy it, great. But if you don't enjoy it, you're going to do it anyway, because you got to reach the goal. And what you just said is so important. The way you feel about what you're doing is a huge indicator about whether or not you should be doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you just listen.
Yeah. Now, where if someone wanted to know more about what you're doing, if, you know, any of the ladies that are listening to this, you know, are in the Midwest area, or just anyone in general out there that is seeking care, that has an elderly parent, and it, you know, my audience is primarily women, and it's the women, the ones that are looking out, you know, when that time comes, it's us doing the legwork, doing the research. Where can people find out more about you and reach you?
You'll find these, you know, cutesy management bios on shepherdpremierseniorliving.com. So please go there to learn more about Medline. If you really, Medline, about Shepherd. If you want to know more about me, just call this number, 815-276-9600, or I'm Theresa at shepherdresidentialcare.com. And I am completely available.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Theresa. It has been an
Happy
honor having you and speaking and talking about something that I think a lot of us, like I said, kind of like put off. You don't want to think about your parent, ever, having to, deal with any difficulties or so on. But the reality of life is that, that at some point, in our lives, they were the one holding our hand and, and helping us through those first steps. And at the end of their life, it's going to be us also holding their hand and walking them, through that transition. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Happy to do it.
I loved it. And I learned something new every day.
Awesome.
I'm like, no more facility. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no F word.
It sounds like prison,
It does, doesn't it?
Yes.
That's not how
the moment
people should
you
live.
said it, I'm like, it does sound like prison.
Sure. That's the trend. That's the trend we're bucking.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'd love to have you in the future and you telling me the story about how it went when you built from the ground up. I'm interested, you know what I mean? Just to see the new learnings, the new experiences and any new things that you might, want to share with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. Nice to meet you.
The same to you.
I hope this episode left you feeling inspired and ready to get inflows of cash, inflows of light, and inflows of faith in your life. I welcome your reviews on iTunes. Please leave me a review and help me create an amazing community of women in flow. Thank you, as always, for sharing your voice by going to michellebosch.com and joining the conversation about this show. And while you're there, grab a copy of my 10 Commandments to Living a Life in Flow. You can also follow me on Facebook at Michelle Bosch and on Instagram at Michelle Bosch Official. Thank you very much, and until the next one.